These are 10 of the nastiest ways people have used to torture and kill others in the history of mankind. This list includes both ancient and modern techniques of inflicting pain everywhere from England to China. I hope you enjoy learning about it, and please, don't try this at home. Perhaps the most famous medieval torture device, the rack, was theoretically used to stretch the heretic by pulling on the ankle and wrist until it broke in half and the torturer made a wish. But usually this eerie torture ledge ended with the limbs pulled out of the joints and the victims left to ponder their sins, real or imaginary. The torturer made several long cuts around the body and then pulled to separate the skin from the muscles. The worst thing is that people will not die soon, but they can live without skin during such days. They were usually peeled and chained in the field, vulnerable to weather, small animals, birds, insects, and human elements, and tortured further by throwing stones and similar objects. Eventually, you will die for obvious reasons, such as infection or blood loss. Their whole bodies will turn into big wounds. One of the simpler but more effective medieval punishments, the iron torture chair, pierced the human body at every point of contact. These points penetrate deep enough to pierce the skin, but not deep enough to damage important organs or major arteries. Until the victim was removed, the stool closed the wound, so the person did not even bleed heavily. Not just a rocking metal band, the Iron Maiden torture device is truly the stuff of nightmares. It was an enclosed structure lined with spikes that would entirely surround a person. They would be left inside for interminable amounts of time, unable to do anything but stand, lest they be pierced by the metal protrusions. You can guess how it might go once the legs started to tire out. This is probably the most imaginative method of torture I have discovered. Bamboo torture is just that, torture with bamboo. Bamboo torture is letting the bamboo shoots grow into the body of the tortured one. Bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. Certain species of bamboo can grow 910 millimeters (36 in) within a 24-hour period. So an obvious use of this knowledge to our ancestors was to torture people with it. A Spanish donkey is a triangular plank that forces a person to spread out and put their weight directly on the crotch. The weight is then attached to the foot until the weight is split in the center. What was the medieval attraction to vaginal torture? This is the brutal method Northmen used to kill only the worst criminals. It was both a religious act and an execution because the lives of the murderers were sacrificed to the gods. The ritual consisted of opening a person's back with an axe, breaking the ribs, and exposing the lungs. Next, the two sides of the torso were stretched in opposite directions to create flesh and skin wings, or eagles. It also removes the lungs from the rib cage that remains attached to the esophagus, allowing a person to breathe and stay alive until he eventually dies of blood loss. The breaking wheel is a massive wooden wheel on which the penalized person is chained and thrashed with heavy things. Those wheels were often mounted vertically on a spinning mechanism with a fire underneath, so that as the torturer spun the wheel, the tortured person was burned for a few moments. They would sometimes mount the wheel vertically on towering wooden tower-like structures and leave it to die in the sun after beating the chastised one with a heavy wooden stick on the wheel. They would even untie damaged limbs and retie them in the most awkward configurations in order to inflict even more misery on the victim. The breaking wheel method would not inevitably result in the death of a person. While it does not sound like a torture device, the Spanish tickler had nothing to do with ticking. It was a razor-sharp claw-like tool that the torturer would grasp in their hand and use to rend the flesh of the tortured person by exerting pressure on the skin. Usually, such torture would be performed in public, and the torturer would take his time scarring the person inch by inch. Sometimes the Spanish tickler would be combined with other torture methods such as racking, pulling a person apart to the point of limbs breaking, and rat torture. In most cases, those who received the Spanish tickler act could not survive to see another day because of the tremendous pain it caused. Imagine a long, deep wound all over your body. That must have been a horrible way to go. These are the 10 worst tortures in the history of mankind that no one wants to experience. Subscribe if you like the video